Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Happy Dystopian. Welcome also to Ferdi. Welcome back.
Thank you, and welcome to everyone watching.
The last time, I think it was already this year,
I believe so,
but still, it was quite a long time ago.
yeah,
I've been busy with a lot of things.
it's also been a rough year so far, so lots of things to discuss again.
A rough year in terms of.
Well, not for me personally, I have to, add, but for the stream to discuss, there's so much. So in that sense, I think it's been rough.
Yeah, a lot has happened. So I call this one season 2. So we're starting after a bit of a break again with the podcast. This time also audio and video.
With video.
With video. And I call this one episode 0 because it should be the start of a
New
bigger
dawn,
new dawn,
Yeah.
bigger
new
season.
beginnings, great resets.
Great reset, is it?
Yeah, we're episode 0, right?
Yeah. This is the great reset of the Happy Dystopia. Absolutely. All right, so let's continue. So we have a few topics for today. So as I mentioned, it's episode 0. I would like to talk a little bit about today's election in France. So it's going to take place today and
Right
this
now.
evening. Right now, it's happening as we speak.
Go out and vote.
Go out and vote if you are eligible to. We're going to talk a bit about the whole war situation that's going on here in Europe. I'm going to talk about a new fiscal framework proposed by the Dutch and Spanish governments. And then also how that fits into the whole monetary thing, which has been a big topic every time for us and again today. So let's continue. Who will win? Well, I don't think it's a good idea to make predictions because by the time people see this, they probably already know what happened.
They'll suspect that we checked the results probably.
Yeah, absolutely. But I did watch the big debate this week.
Right.
I was a bit, how to put it, annoyed that there wasn't even a subtitled version available.
Yeah.
So we are here in the Netherlands, and when there's US elections, all those debates are live streamed with subtitles, and there are experts being invited in the middle of the night to discuss it. And then if it comes to France, there's nothing going on.
No energy.
Exactly, and that's a bit of a problem, I think. But that we do know a lot about the US, but then something that is happening in France, which is, I
So
think, for
close.
us far
Yeah.
more important.
Yeah, but I think this election and the entire presidential, election system in France is such a kind of a joke in these situations where there's one less popular candidate, such as Le Pen. So who will win? Macron? Well, I think it's obvious. I think everyone is thinking it. And unlike in the US, for instance, where Donald Trump won, it's not so easy for Le Pen to win here. So I think that's also why people don't have a lot of attention for it, because they know that the chance that she turns out the victor is negligible, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think right now in the polls, Macron is widening his lead. But a few weeks ago, they were like neck to neck. Macron had a lead of a few percent, which is in the margin of error. And that was polling conducted based on the second round. You know?
Yeah, it's true.
So I don't think she has no shot at all. But so as I told you before, I watched the debate in French, which was took quite a lot of energy. So I didn't watch the whole thing. But I think what Macron really convincingly did was question Marine Le Pen's economic program. And her economic program, it's very irresponsible. Yeah, we've been talking before about the extreme spending within the Eurozone, and under Le Pen government it will get far worse.
Yeah, it's
So-
just national spending instead of spending
Exactly.
by the EU.
So she has the idea that the income tax will only start when you're 30 or older. So younger people will pay no income tax.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I'm against it.
Not so much, right? Not so much on your
Exactly.
part.
No, but if you keep in mind that many French people pay about half of their gross income in taxes, I think it's pretty much similar to what it is here. And then after you have your birthday, you lose half of your income. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it would make that birthday quite a nightmare to look forward to.
Exactly, and then the retirement age should be 60, so there's only 30 years
Where you're gonna pay.
to build up your entire tax base. So one thing that she mentioned that I did find interesting was about the energy market. So the energy in France is produced very cheaply, but then it gets onto the European market, where it becomes part of the European market and has a lot higher market value. And then Marine was saying, okay, but that benefits the people who produce the energy, but not necessarily the businesses and people who consume the energy. So she wants to be like sort of independent in the energy sphere of Europe.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was interesting. But let's see what happens. On the one hand, I would like Marine to win because it would shake up the entire European situation. On the other hand, mainly economically, it will not be the best idea.
Yeah, I think that's it would be like 2016, but even more surprising, right? If she pulled it off right now, and if she had any chance, it would be interesting to see what kind of real proposal she would do politically, in the sense that, well, no income tax, that's so weird to cut it off at 30 years, but there's something to say for a lower income tax for people starting their career. So it's just a sentiment she's trying to bring up, I think. But unfortunately, I don't think she has a chance, and I don't think that Macron has any fear of losing in this.
Yeah. Well, I think the sentiment is good to make to increase purchasing power for younger people specifically, but this is probably not the way to go. So, but let's see. It's going to be exciting tonight.
Right.
Then the next topic is something that you suggested we introduce. So it's the whole conflict, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Of course, everybody is aware.
Right.
Here you see Putin with his Minister of Defense.
Oh boy.
Yeah, looking very serious.
Very powerful, right?
Very powerful, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, not necessarily what the situation in the war in Ukraine is right now, because it's looking to become a stalemate, or maybe Russia occupies some places in the east and Ukraine takes control of the rest of Ukraine again. But that's a different matter. I think the consequences, because it's now been 2 months since the invasion, almost to the day, have been quite great, not only on the energy market, but also on the amount of uncertainty in all kinds of industries. I think we've seen in the past 2 years in COVID, we've seen a lot of shifts from spending from the service sector to physical goods.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the service sector was shut down because of COVID, so everybody wanted to buy gardening equipment or fitness equipment for at home. So a lot of physical goods spending. And I think what we're seeing now is kind of like the breakaway of one block, Russia and China, further and further away from like the Western trade centers and the Western trade activity, which is very interesting to see on the markets, because all the markets for material goods and resources are skyrocketing. Everyone is thinking about, where do I get my next 1,000 megatons of steel in this economy, right? Because it's also uncertain. At the same time, everything is reopening again in COVID, after COVID times now. So we have a lot of services that are looking to make back all the profits that they lost. And on the other hand, we have these supply chains that are totally disrupted again by Russia and their invasion of Ukraine and Western actions against it. So what I'm wondering, and I'm wondering what you think about it, is we've seen the shift of spending from service to physical, a lot of demand for physical goods. Now there's huge inflation in physical goods. And now maybe we're going to see a shift again back to the service industry of a lot of spending. In this tight labor market right now, it's going to wreck the economy, I think, because physical goods are getting so expensive, people are no longer considering them, and the service industry just isn't ready yet. So I think the war in Russia and our actions to condemn it have been impactful in a way that's not really considered yet in the news, in the way that people are going to put their money in different things again, because there's again such a shock to the system.
Yeah, I think we have yet to see the full impact, absolutely. You see in the service industry that a lot of businesses are still struggling, and now mainly with getting the labor to perform those services. So there have been news articles about restaurants, for instance, only being open a few days a week because they can't find the staff to be open week round. So there's a lot of bottlenecks appearing at different spots in the economy. What I found interesting, what you said, was that Russia was decoupled from the Western economic system, but then also China. Is there already something taking place in the relationship between China and the West?
Well, I think there's been a number of moves also in the financial system with, new frameworks being adopted to introduce like a petro yuan, and Israel buying lots of Chinese foreign reserve, those kind of signs that China understand it's being pressured so hard right now by the US to stay neutral. But I think it's showing by those actions what side it's taken in that way. So China is of course not as decoupled as Russia, and they're not subject to sanctions. But for the future development, I think it's definitely visible that they're drifting apart.
Yeah, I think China is trying to walk a tightrope, not giving the West everything they want, but also trying to engage with both sides. And I think for now that's a good way to handle. But let's see how it turns out. For me, the big question is this decoupling. In how far is that going to be an exception, and in how far is that going to be like the new normal? So I think what the best case scenario would have been that Russia already would have backed down, saying, okay, these sanctions are too heavy, we're going to back down and we want to get back into the club.
Yeah.
As of yet, it has not happened. So the question is, are we going to use these measures again somewhere else, on China, on Iran, or on other powers? And also, how are actors going to react to the possibility that this could take place?
Right, yeah. Well, I think part of the answer is we were always most afraid of what would happen if we decoupled from Russia. And now that's happening, or at least our politicians, because it's now becoming summer, they can be arrogant all summer, saying that
natural gas is not as necessary as.
We're not going to import gas again, or oil, or we're going to look for different sources. But then when the winter comes, they'll sing a different tune, of course. But that kind of decoupling, if we can survive that, I think you make a good point that internationally all the powers will have to review their amount of redundancy in the world economy, because a lot of them will turn out to not be as necessary for a stable economy in the West as was expected before.
Yeah.
But of course, that is implying that we're not going to have an imploding economy in the coming 2 years, because that seems to be happening.
Well, the winter is quite some months away, eh?
Yeah.
And I think Russia is also really struggling. So
it is true.
They might still back down in a couple of months. We don't know that yet.
That's true. It's really a Mexican stare down, standoff where everyone's just holding their breath.
Who blinks first?
Who blinks first? And of course, if in the next winter we're not buying Russian gas at their usual prices, Russia will also have no money anymore. So it's gonna be interesting to see who holds their breath the longest.
So you're talking about imploding economy. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, I mean, the 2022 update has been installed, and inflation is running loose. Shit has hit the fan, truly, but that's according to the official inflation numbers still.
Yeah.
A few days ago, there was a statistic on the production price inflation in Germany. In March of this year, it was 30% compared to a year earlier. And that the time before that happened was 1945, I think.
Mm.
So the inflation that's being recorded right now in the first few months is still just a sign of what's coming, or
Yeah,
at least
absolutely.
what's happening under the surface. And well, a lot of people are just not going to be able to live with the same amount of welfare anymore that they did have before.
Yeah, but I
These
think there
events
are
took
still
place.
multiple options. So the one case is there's going to be an economic crash because there is going to be a clampdown on the easy money. But I think if there's no clampdown on the easy money, then the inflation can just continue. And it can continue for multiple years. It's not something that is just...
Yeah. Yeah, but I think the problem with that is that if we do clamp down, there's going to be so many bankruptcies because we've upheld unhealthy businesses so long with this money.
So there's two different ways out, but which one do you think is the most likely?
The most likely to happen,
Yes.
or the most healthy?
Well, both perhaps. I don't know.
I think the most likely is to happen is that it's going to sizzle out. There's not going to be a clampdown like the US is trying right now, and I think it's working in the US to a certain extent. But in the most recent report by the European Central Bank, they made no mention towards rapidly raising the interest rates or whatever. They emphasized Russia and Russia's role in raising the prices and in the need for financial easiness, because otherwise they could not take such a shock. So it looks like they're not going to do shock and awe.
So that means we could be walking around with wheelbarrows of cash again.
Yeah,
only this time digitally.
Yeah, cashless society, here we come, right? And it better, because I don't have a bag that big for what's coming. No, I mean, that's a realistic scenario now. People are spooked with 10% inflation, and that's inflation that's already happened, right? It's history, and it's now the price you pay. But if that continues for 2 or 3 years, can you imagine? Yeah, it's going to be real social unrest. I think the only reason that there's no social unrest yet is because the powers that be have so, beautifully almost tied the higher prices with Putin's invasion of Ukraine. People have some sort of tolerance for it because they think like, oh, it's like an international military event and confrontation. So these are times of war, as the slide also indicates.
Yeah, but even so, I think, you still know what's going on your own wallet and with your own prices of the energy and the food. So I don't know, it could help a bit, but...
Yeah, I'm sure that this content is growing every day.
Yeah.
With especially the poor
part. So let's see, perhaps Marine Le Pen does have a chance.
Well, we'll see about that.
So on to the new topic. I wrote an article on fireofeurope.com about a new fiscal proposal for the Eurozone. So just to recap that really quickly, there used to be a system in place in which governments were not allowed to run large deficits. Then in the wake of the COVID pandemic, pretty much all governments stopped following those rules. So now...
with permission.
With permission. So now in the picture you see the finance ministers of Spain and the Netherlands who jointly proposed a new framework in which basically countries can decide on their own goals and their own rules. Well, as I put it in that article, I think it has about the value of a snowflake in a hot tub. I don't think this proposal makes any sense. But I'm curious to know what you think about it.
Well, I think I have a bit of a double opinion because the ideas that are being proposed themselves I don't really agree with. On the other hand, I am positive towards the fact that at least they are talking about fiscal stability again and a framework that's supposed to work for all the Euro member states. The problem is that the framework is entirely based on the paradigm of we have to spend on these transitions to the green economy and the digital economy.
Yeah.
So it's just a blank check again for these states and ministers to spend millions and millions over budget and just say, well, it's for the green transition, so it turns out okay in the medium and long term. It's just fantasy money again, right? So we're gonna earn it back because the earth is not gonna die because we put down 1,000 windmills here. So it's always profitable if you start looking at that, and I think that's the dangerous part of such a framework. And it's also, again, part of the EU that's kind of overreaching, right? Using like the EU budgetary means to force these ideas of the green transition and the digital transition. It's no longer democratic whether that's going to happen or not. It's just set in stone now.
Yeah, also I think it's very interesting that the EU still has like a very small footprint in terms of civil servants, and they're not really providing that many services. So instead of providing services, they have a big pot of money, a pot of gold that they are going to put into the economy, and they are going to monitor those funds. But that is, I think, in terms of political science, like a really new idea on how a government should function.
Yeah, but it's an idea we've seen, of course, because governments always know we're going to invest in this or that in order to either increase welfare or increase the income or decrease crime or whatever. And here they're doing exactly the same, only they're just emphasizing those two transitions we have to take together as the EU. But it's just a limitless where you can just keep throwing money in. And you can always say, well, because it's not 0.5 degrees hotter in 200 years, those people will have a chance of living.
Yeah, but
so now it's profitable.
Of course, it's all impossible to measure and highly dependent on what the rest of the world
is going to do.
But I think traditionally a government just has to provide services to the people, like education, healthcare, security. And the EU is in that sense not a traditional government which is providing services, although the areas where they are providing services, like in these trade deals and and in the antitrust interventions, I think they're doing quite well.
Yeah, definitely. So they have their specialties in that case.
Absolutely. So interesting. So this is the spending side, and then next we're going to look a bit at the borrowing side. So Ferdy, you suggested that I put this graph in the presentation.
I think it's a really interesting chart because of two reasons. The first is, you can see how the past 2 years have treated the different amounts of income, at least in the US. These are numbers from America. As we can see in the past 2 years, the top 1% has taken such a huge amount of wealth extra that no previous record would ever have been that high, as you can see. The reason why it's so interesting is that at the same time, of course, the Federal Reserve opened the money printer to everyone, but especially to people with a lot of assets. So what we're seeing here is the consequence of what we also just discussed. Political institution messing with the economy and with the money supply, and these are the effects. They're just enriching the wealthy, as it were. A dramatic chart on itself, but I think it takes a lot of more meaning if you also look at the inflation chart besides this. And then you can see who is going to be hurt by inflation, who has reaped the fruits of the money printing, and who is going to reap all the horror.
Yeah, so we're going to get back to this one in a second. But then, we also have here a chart with the total assets of the Federal Reserve, where you also see that their balance sheet has really expanded.
They've stacked on corporate debt, and that meant that corporate stocks have risen. So people that were foolish enough to buy corporate stocks before economic crash, thinking that it might hurt the economy, they were the real fools because of this kind of money printing.
Yeah, you say the people who sold their shares because they thought it was going to go down?
It's a pandemic. There's supposed to be extra bankruptcies and decreased economic growth. But of course, the Federal Reserve and other central banks thought, no, we know a trick. We can just insert this money into the economy and then everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So then if you go back to that original graph, you have here the different strata of society, pretty much. And then
Right.
in the red, we have the top 1%. And what's interesting, if you look back to the year 2000, when we were kids, and we were, if then you were talking about a millionaire, you know, that person had a wealth of about 12 million USD. And then that same person right now would have 36,
Right.
36 million. And then what Wolf Street here says, that the truly rich are not shown separately. So there are, of course, people who are far more wealthy,
Yeah,
who
and
have
it's
billions.
exponentially, of course.
But yeah, it's very hard to get accurate data on those people, I think. I mean, they will try to be hiding their wealth. Here and
yeah,
there.
it's difficult to calculate probably.
And then you see the green and the purple ones, which is yeah, most of us, 90%, has been sort of stable. And then there's the yellow group, that's the top 10%, and they have also profited quite a bit.
Yeah, of course, relatively to the bottom classes, they have profited. But,
Yeah, they've almost doubled, you know. That's also
They have. But the thing is, you know, even at the very lower charts, they can have doubled, but it just doesn't matter because in relative terms, the top 1% has so much more money. The interesting thing is that in these 2 years, the amount of wealth for these top percent has increased the same amount as it has increased since 2008. So we have 2008 here.
Yeah.
Then it increases about 4 dashes, or about 10 million until 2020.
Yeah.
And then between 2020 and now, it also increases about 4 dashes, about 10 million.
Yeah, it has been pretty much a revolutionary time that we've been in terms of wealth distribution.
It's been accelerated with like a factor of 4, and that's pretty major. So that's like a direct effect of what's happened. And the top 1% is going to be able to deal with the outfall, being the inflation.
Of
but
course,
these people who do not have any extra wealth because of these policies, they're going to be burned.
I mean, I think there will have to be some sort of political solution to this. I mean, I think we can't say like, yeah, that's just how it is. And
well, we can't just give the bottom half money because
of course,
the fiscal budget, won't survive that.
Of course, there's a lot of challenges, but I think what we also cannot do is just let this stand.
No, definitely, but more like an outsider's perspective, like how the coming years for these groups and that group are going to be in terms of what they will lose to the inflation.
Yeah, because of course for the 90%, that's of course more relevant. You know? They will experience more change than the
they
top 1%. They
actually look at their income and outcome every month, because otherwise they might not make it. And for them, inflation is going to be an actual problem. While for the top 1%, either way, they will just spend a lot of money, while they were technically the only ones who reap the benefits, really, of that crazy
will spend policy. Or will also invest a lot, probably. Yeah.
Or hold back,
But for instance, in Germany, after the period of hyperinflation, they had the political choice that, for instance, all real estate was refinanced and everyone had a mortgage again. You know? So
yeah, that's easy.
So the fun times were like solved
instantly over
in that way. And I think we are going to see something similar to that happening, because I mean this is not sustainable, I think.
Yeah, but then the question is the top 1% powerful enough to stop that from happening?
I think a lot of them are also aware that something needs to happen.
Yeah,
the Warren Buffetts of this world, and I mean they are aware that.
Yeah, but I hope I don't think that they're thinking in those terms, like refinancing everyone's house again, starting all over.
No. I mean that was of course in a different time period.
Yeah,
I mean,
so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of solution people will come up with.
Yeah. Nowadays real estate is still important, but the stock market has become far more important, and the solution needs to be something else. But just to give an example of what could be done. So anything else to discuss about the monetary situation?
Well, I'm really looking forward to the April numbers for the Netherlands, because of course in March we topped the charts with 12.1 official CPI recorded inflation.
Yeah.
So
Good times.
we're probably, I hope it's going to go down, and it probably is because the gas price has also come down quite a bit again. And I hope that we're not going to say, oh, this is the end of the inflation, and that we're going to be real, and that people are going to realize we're in a dangerous monetary situation, and not just blame everything on Putin.
Yeah, it's interesting that we have now outperformed the 1970s in
Yeah,
terms of
well,
inflation. You know? So
Congratulations to ourselves.
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
interest rate is still at 0%. You know, that's
yeah, back then it was 10% or something.
yeah, it matched the inflation like it should.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens.
Right.
Now let's talk a bit about Fire of Europe. So yeah, we've been making some progress there. So there's also now a weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to. I'll put the link in the description, so you can get some more information on the latest updates, but also a bit of behind the scenes, like how are we progressing. And then I'm also asking the subscribers of the newsletter to help me out here and there. You know, so I asked them to make a comment or perhaps do some proofreading on the articles. So yeah, just if you want to help out.
I'm being paid.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
He's being paid a ridiculous amount.
Ridiculous amounts of money.
Yeah,
Did you see that chart?
Yeah, we have corrected his wages for inflation. So
Right.
it's,
I'm a rich man now.
it's incredible. So yeah, if you could like and subscribe also to this video or audio if you're listening to it on the Spotify, that's also possible.
Also possible.
And yeah, join the conversation. Please leave some comments, and if you want to write your own articles, that's also more than welcome. And I'm going to set up a new podcast season with, I hope, between 5 and 10 other people to join the podcast. So if you are looking and you think it's interesting for you, please reach out as well. I also leave my email address in the description. And then, yeah, Ferdy, would you like to come back for another time in season 2?
Definitely. And
Alright.
I think it would be very interesting if we had like more than 2 people in one podcast.
Okay,
to
okay.
get even more diverse discussions.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah,
Maybe, yeah.
let's see it. So I already have one person who's joining the next season. So that's a great start. Yeah. So thank you all for watching and listening. Stay sane.
Stay sane and see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you.